On March 1st, a drone didn't strike a military base or an airfield or, a column of tanks. It struck a civilian Amazon Web Services building.
Right.
Yeah.
And in an instant, the banking system, the payment processors, and just the consumer services for an entire region went completely dark.
It's wild.
I mean, it is a profound shift in how we need to view the digital infrastructure we rely on every single day.
Yeah.
The cloud is not floating safely above the physical world. It lives in concrete buildings, and right now those buildings are very much in the crosshairs.
Welcome to today's deep dive. So we are unpacking a recent and intensely detailed Patreon post that was originally sourced from a Wired report.
Yeah.
And the mission today is to understand an unprecedented intersection. We're looking at the exact moment where the shiny corporate world of Silicon Valley collides head-on with active kinetic warfare.
What's fascinating here is that we usually think of modern warfare in terms of troops and munitions, right? But this source forces us to look at civilian data centers and software providers as active front lines. To do that, we're looking at a document that outlines a very real, very present threat to the global tech ecosystem.
Now, before we get into the details, I need to state something very clearly for you, the listener, because this source material involves an extremely politically charged and violent ongoing war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. We are operating with a strict boundary today. We are taking absolutely no sides.
Exactly. We are not endorsing any viewpoints, left-wing or right-wing.
Right. Our singular job is to analyze the facts, the timelines, and the claims exactly as they are presented in this original text. The goal is just to help you understand the landscape of this conflict as it's reported without adding any spin or taking any political stance.
And that is the only way to objectively look at the sheer scale of the information in this report. Because the central premise here entirely flips our traditional understanding of a battlefield.
It really does.
According to the text on Tuesday, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, they labeled 18 major U.S. technology companies as, quote-unquote, terrorist spy companies. And they threatened to attack these companies across the Middle East starting Wednesday, April 1st.
And we're not talking about obscure defense contractors here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this because the IRGC's Telegram channel warning listed massive names. Apple, Google, IBM, Intel, Microsoft, Tesla, and Boeing.
Yeah, it's a massive hit list.
It's huge. And they demanded that employees of these companies evacuate their offices immediately, and they even warned civilians in the region to stay entirely away from those buildings.
The inclusion of demands for civilian evacuation is just a stark indicator of the physical nature of these threats. They aren't talking about deploying a computer virus to steal data or, deface a website.
Right.
They're explicitly signaling kinetic physical attacks on the buildings, housing the servers, the hardware, and the actual employees.
So let's talk about why we have to take a threat like that seriously, because the text points to a very specific precedent. This brings us back to that March 1st attack on the Amazon Web Services data centers.
Yeah.
Drones physically hit 2 AWS locations and damaged a third across the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. It was essentially like hitting the master circuit breaker for an entire region's digital life. But I have to ask, if a drone hits a server farm, wouldn't the cloud just instantly reroute the data to another server farm in Europe or the US? I mean, how does a physical strike cause a regional digital blackout?
Well, normally it would reroute. That is the entire selling point of cloud architecture, right?
Redundancy.
Exactly, redundancy. Data is mirrored in what are called availability zones. So if one building goes down, another instantly takes over so the end user never even notices.
Right.
But the source details a much more sophisticated operation here. The attackers didn't just use brute force to blow up a building. They specifically targeted and disabled the backup systems that are designed to prevent those disruptions.
Wait, how do you blow up a backup system that's supposed to be entirely decentralized?
By coordinating a physical strike with a simultaneous cyber attack,
Right.
Or, by physically severing the redundant fiber optic lines that connect those availability zones to the broader internet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you blind the primary servers with a kinetic drone strike, and you simultaneously jam or sever the emergency digital exit routes.
So they trap the data.
Exactly. When those AWS centers were hit, the automated failovers just couldn't trigger. And that is why local banking websites, payment processors, and crucial civilian infrastructure crashed entirely. The attackers understood the architecture of the cloud, and they dismantled it structurally.
That takes a level of operational planning that shows this isn't just random vandalism.
No, not at all.
This is a deliberate strategy to cripple a civilian economy. And what's crazy is that when Wired reached out to these massive corporations regarding the April 1st threats, most of them didn't respond at all.
Yeah?
I mean, Google, Microsoft, and JP Morgan actively declined to comment.
Well, you're looking at publicly traded behemoths that maintain massive PR departments designed to manage every conceivable crisis.
Right, they usually have a statement for everything.
Right. But when your civilian infrastructure is suddenly designated as a military target in an active war zone, the standard corporate playbook simply ceases to function.
I guess issuing a press release saying, our data centers are secure almost sounds like a challenge to a hostile military force.
Precisely. Any public statement could inadvertently reveal defensive postures or escalate the physical danger to their employees on the ground. The silence is really a reflection of a corporate world completely unequipped to deal with state-level military targeting.
Wait, I have to ask the obvious question here on behalf of the listener. Are these just companies selling generic software, or are they actively building the machinery of war? I mean, why is the IRGC targeting Google or Microsoft? Are these companies really legitimate military targets just because a soldier happens to use a Windows laptop or an iPhone?
It's a fair question.
It seems like a massive leap to go from selling consumer electronics to being labeled a terrorist spy company.
Well, the IRGC's justification, according to the source, is rooted in the events of February 28. That is when a joint U.S.-Israeli attack resulted in the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei at the start of the war.
Right, okay.
The IRGC claims that these U.S. tech companies are supplying the specific technology that enabled those assassinations. So they're not talking about generic office software. The text points directly to Palantir.
Palantir. They're a major data analytics company, right?
Yes, and they maintain a prominent corporate office in Abu Dhabi.
But Palantir is known for handling massive amounts of data. How does analyzing data translate to enabling a lethal strike?
The report details Palantir's involvement in a Pentagon artificial intelligence program called Project Maven.
Okay.
This program was designed to fundamentally change how the military processes intelligence, because modern drones and satellites collect terabytes of visual data every single hour.
That's way more video than human analysts could ever watch, right? Let alone analyze in real time.
Exactly. So they use commercial AI developed by civilian tech companies to parse those feeds. Project Maven's algorithms are trained to instantly identify specific heat signatures, vehicle shapes, or behavioral patterns on the ground.
Wow.
So the software highlights a potential target from a satellite image, it flags it, and feeds that synthesized intelligence directly to military commanders who then order the airstrikes.
So the gap between a Silicon Valley coder writing an algorithm and a lethal weapon being deployed is essentially zero.
Essentially, yeah.
The software is the literal targeting mechanism.
And that is the core of the IRGC's argument. When a civilian company builds the AI that points the laser for the missile, the line between tech vendor and active combatant just disappears. This raises an important question about the sustainability of the U.S. Department of Defense's strategy.
How so?
Well, the military is heavily relying on commercial suppliers for its most advanced tactical capabilities, right?
What?
But those suppliers maintain physical operations and highly vulnerable data centers in extremely volatile overseas regions.
It's like building a multi-billion-dollar glass house directly on top of an active fault line. You are putting your most critical sensitive capabilities out in the open, protected only by corporate security guards and glass doors.
And placing it directly in a region that is currently experiencing a historic multi-billion-dollar economic contradiction.
Yeah, that contradiction is one of the most jarring parts of this entire report.
Right.
Because U.S. tech giants have recently poured billions of dollars into technology and infrastructure investments in the Persian Gulf.
Billions.
They are making a massive financial bet that this specific region, places like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, will become the global hub for artificial intelligence development outside of California.
Right. They are aggressively building out server farms, they're establishing research institutes, and hiring engineers to construct this sort of AI utopia.
Yeah.
But they are doing this while the surrounding geography is actively being bombarded.
We have to look at the physical military reality on the ground throughout March. While these companies are laying down billion-dollar fiber optic cables, the U.S. military is aggressively bombing IRGC drone networks in the exact same region. I mean, the U.S. Central Command has been regularly releasing images of airstrikes completely destroying mobile missile launchers.
The juxtaposition is just staggering. You have civilian engineers attempting to stand up next-generation neural networks, while military forces are actively hunting and destroying the launch platforms that are targeting those very networks.
It's surreal.
But the source points out a complex shift in this operational tempo recently.
Right, the text mentions a pause in the air campaign. The United States temporarily suspended its attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure. But if the April 1st threats from the IRGC are escalating, why would the U.S. suddenly stop hitting their energy grid?
Well, according to the text, the pause is a calculated diplomatic maneuver to explore potential peace talks with Tehran.
Okay.
It is an attempt to create a window for de-escalation before the April 1st deadline forces an even larger confrontation.
I mean, a diplomatic off-ramp makes sense. But the whiplash in this report is wild because in the very next paragraph, the text reports that the Pentagon is concurrently considering deploying up to 10,000 additional troops to the Middle East.
Right. And that deployment would be specifically designed to prepare for a potential ground invasion.
So they are pausing the bombs to talk peace while simultaneously staging 10,000 troops for a potential ground war.
Exactly.
That dual approach tells you exactly how fragile the situation is. The military is preparing for the diplomatic window to fail spectacularly. And we have to remember, the human toll of this failure is already massive. We can't just talk about data centers and corporate strategy without looking at the severe reality happening on the ground since this conflict escalated back on February 28th.
The statistics provided in the source really anchor this entire geopolitical chessboard in human reality. Since the assassination of Khamenei, approximately 2,000 Iranians have been killed.
2,000.
Yes. Alongside them, at least 13 U.S. service members have lost their lives.
2,000 casualties in just over a month. That is an incredibly intense concentration of violence, and the geographic footprint of that violence is widening rapidly.
It is. The conflict has violently expanded far beyond isolated drone strikes. Iranian retaliatory attacks have hit targets across multiple sovereign borders. We're seeing strikes in Israel, in the Gulf states, and in Iraq.
Yeah.
We are looking at a true regional escalation that is pulling in neighboring countries.
And it is spilling out of the Middle East and directly into the daily lives of people thousands of miles away, because the text explicitly focuses on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Strait of Hormuz is the ultimate physical choke point. It is a vital but very narrow shipping route connecting Iran to the United Arab Emirates and Oman.
Right.
According to the report, this crucial strait has remained virtually closed for weeks due to the threat of Iranian military action.
And this is why this matters to you listening. You might think a regional conflict in the Persian Gulf stays in the Persian Gulf. But when the Strait of Hormuz closes, that is a massive percentage of the world's daily oil supply suddenly trapped.
Exactly.
The ships have to reroute thousands of miles around the continent of Africa, which takes weeks longer and costs millions of dollars more in fuel.
And it is not just oil. It is liquid natural gas.
Yeah.
It is consumer goods. It is industrial components.
Yeah.
The delay in shipping directly drives up inflation globally. It impacts the cost of the fuel you put in your car and the price of the everyday goods on your local store shelves.
But there is an even deeper layer to that choke point, right? It isn't just ships moving through the water.
No, exactly. The physical geography of the Earth forces both oil tankers and digital infrastructure through the exact same narrow straits. The vast majority of global internet traffic does not travel through satellites. It travels through massive submarine fiber optic cables laying on the ocean floor.
And those cables are routed right through places like the Strait of Hormuz.
Because that is the most efficient path connecting the data centers in the Middle East and Asia to the infrastructure in Europe. So when a waterway becomes an active militarized zone, you are not just threatening global shipping logistics, you are threatening the physical cables that allow the global internet to function.
Wow.
A targeted explosive charge on the seafloor in the Strait of Hormuz could sever communications for millions of people in an instant.
It really is the ultimate vulnerability. The supply chain for our physical goods and the supply chain for our digital data are overlapping in the most heavily armed corridors on the planet.
Which brings us back to the central thesis of the Wired report. The infrastructure we view as mundane civilian technology is now deeply and structurally embedded into the front lines of global conflicts.
So what does this all mean? When we step back and look at the entirety of this deep dive, the takeaway is pretty unavoidable. The era of the neutral tech giant is over.
Yeah, it's gone.
The companies building our smartphones, hosting our websites, and developing our artificial intelligence are no longer just civilian enterprises operating outside the bounds of geopolitics. They have literally become the nervous system of modern military operations.
By supplying the AI that identifies targets and the cloud infrastructure that routes battlefield communications, these corporations have fundamentally changed their own risk profile. They are officially integrated into the military apparatus, which means foreign militaries now view them as primary legitimate targets.
The line between a Silicon Valley tech company and a defense contractor has completely evaporated.
Yeah, it has.
So the next time you open a massive tech company's app or you upload a file to a global cloud provider, just remember how those services actually function. They rely on massive physical data centers, and right now some of those data centers are sitting squarely in the middle of a kinetic war zone waiting to see what happens on April 1st.
And that reality leaves us with a critical, lingering question to think about. If civilian tech companies are fundamentally doubling as military contractors, and their physical data centers are being actively targeted just like military bases, how long will it be before a cyber attack or a drone strike on a commercial server is officially treated as an act of war by the United States government?